is straight feudal, exactly like Tudor England, exactly like medieval Europe. Same principle, exactly. Only here it's only just changing.
I think anybody would think in a democracy today it's not right that the landowners, which was like the old feudal system, should rule the parliament, and the rest of the people with less money, of course, have hardly any voice.
Today doesn't see the end of feudalism. Today sees the beginning of the end of feudalism. And it'll take time, but it will happen. It's inevitable as the sun rising tomorrow. Its days are over.
It happened in August 1990, and we had a gentleman by the name of André Gardez who wanted to come over and take over the island for France.
Well, I first found him outside the church, if you recall.
Yeah.
I was just passing the church and I saw this gentleman laying asleep on the bench, and he looked sort of dressed in military uniform. So I went over and asked him who he was, what he was doing. And all he said was, the notice, you will see the notice and it will be quite apparent to you. So I took it to the greffier and I said, what's all this about? And he said, well, basically someone's going to take over the island at 12 o'clock. He was going back to 1565 and he claimed to have some lineal connection with this character, that he was the true seigneur, he was the true inheritor of the island.
He had tripwires, he had pepper in case he was going to be tracked by dogs. He had all sorts of things, medication in case he'd been wounded, and also he had done his military service and been out in the Belgian Congo. So he was prepared, even when we questioned him, he was prepared to use the rifle.
12 o'clock he planned to take over the island. I can't recall what time we apprehended him.
No, he was running late. It was about, must have been about 12:30 before we apprehended him.
So he wasn't very British, huh? Probably with the time.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
1 hour behind. He was quite impudent, wasn't he, when the seneschal opened the court? I don't recognise this court. What are you charged with? I don't recognise. What are you pleading? I plead nothing. You know, he was very impudent. But the seneschal, being the seneschal, said, "Oh, in that case, guilty." And it was all done in a very democratic way. I don't really know what he was, other than a complete nutter who thought he was going to come over here and just take over the seigneury, claim his rightful inheritance, and we were all going to bow down and yeah, there we go. Silly man. French, you know.
I'm Michael Beaumont, Seigneur of Sark. I hold the island direct from the Crown for certain obligations, an annual rent, a requirement to keep the island free of the Queen's enemies, and hold 40 men, armed men, for the defence of the island. This is the surrender sword of the Germans, and it's beautifully engraved. And that, of course, is now completely gone, but I still have to pay my annual dues. That has never been updated for inflation, so it's only £1.79.
So it's a system of duty and obligation. The workers have an obligation to the tenants has an obligation to the seigneur has an obligation to the crown, and equally, each will protect the layer under it. The Sark people didn't want to change. They liked the system the way it worked, because it worked well. So, as far as we're concerned, we don't know how this new democracy is going to work, because it's full of elected people who don't have the duty and obligation to work for Sark. We just have to wait and see.
They'd spent lots of holidays in the Channel Islands and on Breccu and Sark when they were children. And they really liked the ancient traditions and history, and also being very close to both France and to England. They bought Breccu, and then they first came to me for advice to ask whether Breccu was within the fief of Sark, whether Breccu was part of the feudal system of Sark. And the reason for that was that they had realised that some of Sark's feudal laws were pretty repugnant in a 21st century democracy. The main difficulty was that they couldn't leave Breccu, if it was part of Sark, to all their children when they died. There was a rule of male primogeniture, whereby you had to leave the property to the eldest male.
Democracy has its flaws as well as everything else. Democracy isn't a perfect solution, I don't think, in this world. Well, that's Her Majesty the Queen, that's 1957, 1978. George the Fifth. Prince Charles came over for the 50th anniversary of the relief of Sark from the Germans, and he actually stayed in this house.
Basically, a feudal system depends, you have the overlord who rules, and you have the peasants or serfs who are in his service. The seigneur really is the ruler, the head of state, and he could do pretty much what he wanted. For example, the seigneur, the feudal overlord, rules the roost. When any property would change hands, he used to have to give consent, and he could take a 13th of the purchase price. That was called the treizième.
I was entitled to, as seigneur, 1/13 of the purchase price of the property.
He didn't have to use it for the good of the Sark people, and it could amount to a 13th is a lot, and the properties on Sark are valuable, so it was sort of millions of pounds that he was able to take as his sort of his price for running Sark.
The seigneur had considerable privileges, the main one being the right to 1/13 of the purchase price of property, which we've discussed, the treizième. But whether it be the right to keep a dovecot where birds roost, or the right to keep a female dog that wasn't spayed, or rights over the foreshore.
It was still lawful to beat your wife as long as you did it with a very small finger. A stick that was like a very small finger. So there were some customs which were really difficult.
Really, we're dealing with what is an anachronism, judged by any other society, and it's a question of whether that anachronism was worth preserving in the face of basic democratic fundamentals.
It was technically legal to beat your wife with a small stick, no bigger than your little finger. Although clearly in this day and age that wouldn't happen, that would be interpreted as assault in any language. So the old law has been superseded by a more recent law.
That has been said, and it's been publicised. That is not the case. These ancient laws have long since disappeared, and with the advent of human rights after the war, that really would not have occurred. And knowing Sark wives as I do, that would not have been possible. Very powerful people. Yes.
My wife isn't terribly well. Well, she has Parkinson's, which is, doesn't get better. I certainly don't want her, and she doesn't want to be left in this house when I go. And at night, you don't have any light pollution, so it's very nice. You can see all the stars. And we're not going to have cars.
Can you imagine what it would do to the island? It would completely ruin it.
children can bicycle to school.
I mean,
in the play school, they go to school at 3 years old. They learn
the
to ride
island should be
bicycles.
protected from any of these things.
It's very famous that motor cars are not allowed on Sark, and a few years ago there was a film company who were making a film over here, and they wanted to be able to mount their camera on a car or on a something that was suspended, and so they imported a French Citroën 2CV, but they were only allowed to bring it ashore if all the leads were disconnected. So you had this ridiculous situation. A perfectly good Citroën 2CV was brought ashore, all the leads were ripped out of the engine so it couldn't be started, and then the Citroën was towed behind a tractor, and they mounted the camera on the 2CV, but it was towed around the island on a tractor.
We have to have them for the farm work. But we keep the very old tractors. They do all the work we need. It's just to cultivate the land. We don't use them for any other use than that.
It's the only vehicle which is allowed.
It is, that's right, yeah. There are far too many tractors, but we hope in the new Parliament to limit the numbers and the sizes. Yes, you see the heavy material, there would be 5 tons on that trailer, so you need a strong vehicle to pull that amount. Yeah.
This is Stocks Hotel in Sark. It's our business and our home. And back in 1993, we had a situation where our neighbour had permission to build a house, to build a bungalow. I think we live in an age, a bland age, where people say you must conform to this and you must do this and you must say that. Sark is delightfully independent and remains independent, and I'm not suggesting that we should in any shape or form break any international laws or obligations, but we're quite keen to be left to our own devices, to run our own affairs, to manage our own affairs, and of course a lot of that is based on our feudal heritage. As the bulldozer came onto the site and this noise came down the valley, that the ground shook, it vibrated. One of the things that we provide here for our guests is peace and quiet, and so I said, we can't stomach this, we'll have to do something about it. And so I raised the clameur de haro.
It's the last resort. If they feel that they've been imposed upon, I think is the word that comes to mind.
And in essence, you are pleading to him, please, I've been wronged. Someone has done something which is inconveniencing myself. My own view has been perhaps ignored or overlooked. And so this was the building in question, and so on that particular day I came up. You have to provide 2 witnesses. The thing has to be witnessed. You can't just do it and then walk away. The digger driver looked at me incredulously, as if saying, what on earth are you doing? He looked at me, gone out. And I was wearing my hat, and I think I was wearing a collar and tie as well. And I walked up in front of the digger. The digger was still moving. It was in motion. The driver stopped the digger. He turned it off, sat there in his cab, and at that point I, as you have to do with the clameur, I removed my hat and threw it to the ground in disgust. I fell onto one knee. Bearing in mind the digger is there in front of me. The digger driver is up in his cab. I've got my witnesses standing to one side, and at that point I then pleaded to the Prince Rollo. And I will,
it involves reciting the Lord's Prayer in French and also invoking the clamour, which is Harrow, 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 Mon Dieu, il fait mon tour. Translated, my Lord, come to my aid.
I'm going to serve the harrow on you. Arrow, 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 alad mon prince, on me fait tort, I have been wronged. And then you have to say, if the driver of the digger had carried on with the work, he would have been instantly committing a criminal offence. He was aware of that, he was a local guy. We then had to go to the local seneschal's court and, in essence, to register the clameur. Au roi, séclaire, immortal, invisible, et du ciel, sage, soit honnête et gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
I'm the oldest person on Sark, and I am 93. And I still have a big ambition. I want to be 94. And yet, my surname is Tears. I don't know what I'm laughing about all the time. I don't know. I don't care. Sark holds the record of longevity. 2 years ago, they started a new cemetery. That to shoot tree meant to get it going. No one was dying at all. I know that Sark has been very good for some people, but I want Sark to be good for everyone.
But on Wednesday it'll be the end of 500 years of feudalism. And in the old days, as Fred knows, it was governed by the people that had money. You know, they were the only ones that could afford to be in chief pleas, which is the government. But for some obscure reason, now it's turning into a democracy, and it's not feudal anymore after Wednesday. It's the first democrat way of living.
We want it to be more democratic.
Yeah.
But that means fair deals for all. This is what we want. And I hope we get it.
I don't think everybody's happy with changing it at all. There's quite a few people, quite a lot of people, in my view, that they wanted it left as it was. And it would have suited me as well. Fred? So we're still part of the United Kingdom, but we're not part of the government or anything like that. They can't dictate to us what we should do.
No.
So you can move that anywhere where you like.
And obviously, of course, people with different tastes, etc., you're going to get for and against. Actually, it was a German television camera crew. So, would you say something on this subject? I said, very shortly, yes. Sark has been very good for some. But I want Sark to be good for everyone. That's what I want. And that is democracy to me.
All rise.
Notre partie est aussi étonnant 65 terrain vieille. Torrent est festival terre commandant en attention, mais délivré du mal au siècle des siècles. Amen. Amen.
You always drop your lines when you're on camera, don't you?
Well, I think you must ask them, or you must ask somebody else. I will not talk about the relationship between Sark and Breccu. I won't comment on the relationship between the owners of Breccu or the island of Sark. You must ask them that. I will not respond to that question.
You're in a representative role?
I'm not a politician, and I must not make political comments. You must ask a politician or people of Sark as to whether or not they would wish to answer that question. I'm not prepared to discuss the Barclays at all.
People don't know much about them. They're not big figures in the UK. If you walked down the street in any town in the UK and said who the Barclay brothers, I don't think most people would know. They'd think there was something to do with Barclays Bank. They wouldn't know they're newspaper owners or owners of the rich. They just wouldn't know. They're not great big figures in the UK. In the media world, they are very familiar, but only familiar from afar. We don't get to see them. We don't get to talk to them.
No. They're very reclusive. Well, from our point of view, they're a bit of an enigma. We're not quite sure what you know, what their aims are or anything. They don't actually come and talk to us or anything. So, you know, we don't know, I mean, is the answer.
We don't know. We do not know what they want. I'd like to know why they left Monaco.
Brothers are amazing businessmen. They've built up a huge business of hotels, shipping line, now own the Telegraph and the Ritz. They are very interested in life and politics and use the fortune that they've built up also for a great many philanthropic causes.
And that's one of the things about Sark, is that Sark, I think, mistrusts Sir David and Sir Frederick Berkeley because they don't know them personally. I think they imagine that they are like the baddies out of a Bond film almost, and nothing could be further from the truth.
I'm a project manager, albeit a very successful project manager, I don't mind saying, I came here first and foremost to build, but we met far greater resistance than we expected to from certain areas of the island, and hence the role has evolved somewhat into politics. Okay, well, my name's Kevin Delaney, and I represent Sir Frederick and Sir David Berkeley. I manage their interests here on Sark. We don't own this side. We own this area along this side. This side is owned by various other people, obviously. They're all independent businesses, and best described as what I would term two good old-fashioned gentlemen. They've, in their lifetime, donated over £90 million to charity. And when people criticise them for their being reclusive, I think it's more a case that they're just private people.
And they own about 25% or something of the island now. And that's resented by a lot of people, as you can imagine. They never have liked being told what to do from outside, ever. And so it has caused resentment within the island. But there are those that are working for them and, of course, like them, the money.
Part of the way that the system works is that it's most dangerous when it grants favours to people. And it will grant favours to people in many ways. And it's when those favours are then called in at a later date that we end up with a clear divide between the democracy that we're seeking and the old feudalist system that existed in the past. And we've come not to ring on the doorbell of feudalism and ask to be let in. We've come to smash that door down.
They can make up what they like. None of it's true. I'm Jennifer Cochrane. I've lived on Sark since 1975. I've had innumerable jobs because people here have more than one job. I've been a carriage driver. I've been housekeeper in the seigneury. I've run the newspaper. Because this is not a welfare state. If you don't earn, you don't live here.
Yes. Yeah. But did she show you her book?
No.
Yeah, she's written the book as well.
I proofread a lot of the romantic novels in the Mills and Boon library for a long time, and tried to write one, but I'm not romantic enough.
Oh, right, yeah. So what is your documentary primarily about? I suppose. Who knows?
It was a feudal system that worked very democratically. We had 52 possible members of parliament for 500 people. The story that was presented was that there was a fierce seigneur who dictated to his tenants, who dictated to their family and workers, and that was pure rubbish. The seigneur is the most reasonable man.
I mean, in this day and age, you can't run a system if the people don't want it to run. I mean, you might be able to do that in Zimbabwe with an armed force, but you certainly can't do it in Sark.
Well, we're getting democracy of a kind. You know, this isn't the end of the feudalism. Oh, it's just there, maybe I should say. Sorry, phone. Hello. Today we don't achieve a full democracy as such. One might say that one can be pregnant or not pregnant, but you can't be half pregnant. Well, similarly with democracy, you've either got a democracy or you haven't. Well, we've got half a democracy here today. We're going to find ourselves in a situation when the new chief please sits, that everybody is equal, but some are a little more equal than others just by their birthright. And we feel that is totally unacceptable. The seigneur and the seneschal will be able to sit in chief please without having put themselves before the electorate to earn the right to sit in chief please.
I am primarily appointed as the judge and magistrate, a lay judge, lay magistrate for the island, but my other roles are I am ex officio the presiding officer for chief please. I am also a coroner, so if we have any deaths on the island, I have to investigate suspicious deaths. Fortunately, that doesn't happen very often. I'm also the returning officer for elections, and I am an island trustee who looks after the land and buildings that chief please own on their behalf in terms of maintenance, renovation, etc.
I don't think that the dynamics and the character of feudalism is any greater, or there's any greater illustration of how it would work than in the church. To have a hierarchy in the house of God where we're all deemed to be equal, that doesn't seem particularly right to me.
So I saw him a couple of weekends ago. I saw him yesterday. You saw him yesterday? I think people are very good at it, but it's not the same as...
So there was a sense in which the peasant community would cohere around these joyous occasions. The priest and perhaps the lord would also attend some of these events, which would, to some extent, they would revolve around the church, of course, which would be the focus of a lot of their social life as well. We may not like these class divisions, but the fact of the matter is that in the local community, the community did cohere, that there was a sense of belonging together, whatever one's social station. And that was generated by this sense of the richer taking care of the poorer and vice versa. And I think in modern industrial society, this has inevitably been undermined.
We also keep sheep. That's my son, his living is for sheep, you know, to keep the sheep. Yes. The people that are in charge of this, the Berkeley brothers, Frederick and David Berkeley, are media people. They own the Telegraph newspaper in London.
The badge, it's over the helicopter. The Berkeleys have applied to build a helicopter pad here, supposedly for emergency use only. But we know that they wanted to do it as a dual purpose so that they could transport themselves and their guests into the island. So, yes, that's why we've very politely said no thanks.
We used to be
Top of the head?
very upset when we had to kill the sheep, you know, but so my eyes are watering. It's just with the wind.
She coming?
No.
Oh. Okay.
Repeatedly, their lawyers have made statements in the media saying that Brecco is not part of Sark, and that the Tresiam was illegal, and the Seigneur was illegal, and the Seneschal as well. And it's been a constant battle on their part. It's been a very one-sided affair. They have referred to it as a feud, but my simple mind tells me that a feud has got to be two people. The amounts of money that have been expended on court cases fighting our laws in London, which must be many hundreds of thousands of pounds. Had that money been spent in Sark for the benefit of the people, it would have done a lot of good. People from New York Times are over today. My wife will be speaking to them. Yeah. Don't know why.
He's not dressed yet.
Well. Let's have a look. Peter! Oh, right. Yeah, no, I've got 25 minutes. I think I am partly deaf.
He's 93 years old.
We know that.
Yes.
Unless you say have a beer. English say more haste, less speed. We say other things, but I can't say it on the television. I haven't got one then. No, I haven't got one. 93 is correct, sir. And will you tell the Spanish people that even though I'm 93, I still have one big ambition. I want to be 94. But not to be surprised, because Sark holds the record of longevity.
Yes.
3 years ago, they opened up a new cemetery. Had to shoot 3 men to get it going. No. I'm meant to turn. Pete, can you do it? And there we are. Complete.
When I came in 1975, it was like finding the England I could just about remember from my childhood, with the same values. People were brought up straightforward and honest, and they didn't tell lies. They really did look after their neighbours. There was a tremendous community life.
Come on, let's make a pathway. Father Christmas is coming! He's coming!
I've got to go in there, mate. Yes or no? No?
Santa, get that way. You'll get the chocolate.
That's one thing about Sark. We always have good meals.
But of course, as the years went on, the older Sark people died. Many of the tenants sold to outsiders who had not been brought up to believe that one did one's duty for the island. So slowly the residents of Sark changed from being almost wholly Sark and very Sark orientated, who really did work for nothing for the good of the island, to people who were used to earning for what they did.
I'm off to California.
Sarky. I won't tell you how long ago. People say change is good for us. They say. We will see. I prefer to slow down a bit. Slow down. Instead of doing it in 4 or 5 years, do it in 10, 15 years.
Yeah, it's either you're for the Barclays or against them, which is wrong. There shouldn't be. You should be able to be in the middle, if you like. You should be able to choose the best of both worlds. That is the best thing for the island, really. I'm not a politician.
It's a free world. If they want to pull out, they can do.
The price of democracy, you know, that if you don't like it, you leave, don't you? If you don't like somewhere, it's like when a woman chooses a man, they choose them for the things they like about them, and then sometimes they try and change them. And then when they have changed them, then they leave them. So, and it's a bit like, if you come to Sark and you like it for what it is, and you want to live there, why change it? Not allowed on the island now. No, it's strictly private. They've got cannons up there as well. I don't know if they'll fire them at you. You see, so. Yeah, it's very well secured. Cameras and security guards and everything. You wouldn't get far on it. You've got so much security around there, you must feel it's a bit like a prison. It's like in South Africa when people live in these all white communes, and you know, there's fences, razor wire, guard dogs. It looks like a concentration camp, doesn't it, from the outside? I had the BBC came on board one time, and they asked the people if they could go on ashore, but they wouldn't let them. Well, they said they asked them, but in the what it was they pretended that they'd phoned the Barclays up and asked if they could go ashore, and then they said, and then they pretended that they were refused, but it wasn't that at all. It was just for the, just for the show sort of thing.
Sark news is a very strange weapon indeed. Every paragraph, every sentence is knocking somebody or other on the island. They have a grudge against somebody, for instance, like the Seigneur, whom they appear not to have liked from day one. And the Seneschal, not quite sure why they don't like him, apart from his position is not human rights compliant, you might say. Mrs. Oliver, whomever Mrs. Oliver may be, it would be very nice if Mrs. Oliver would say exactly who they are, but they haven't got the guts to.
Mrs. Oliver is a mystery. She's an anathema. She communicates via email and a PO box in Guernsey. I presume she's a real person.
No idea. Absolutely no idea. A fictitious character, probably.
Well, we've all got a damn good idea. We can't say.
Members of that system are chameleon-like, and they're very quickly able to change from quite vicious opponents to very amiable, bumbling uncles, favourite aunties. But were you to break through that very thin veneer, and perhaps even go in through the front door and into the parlour, you would find banks of fax machines, computers, where they were thriving on what is termed as Sark lark.
People in Sark would hold directorships of companies, and they would hold lots and lots of directorships of companies for which they get fees. And this was a front, and the regulatory people couldn't really see what the companies were doing, and there was a lot of illicit and unlawful activity going on.
And the tax is based on the size of the home that you own. It's simply the measurements of the home that you own. It's quite a complicated system, but the highest you could pay in Sark would be £4,000.
All my clients want to see is Sark to thrive and prosper. They're not in it to make money, they're just there to help and improve. It's almost like part of their philanthropic mission.
I've got a strange idea that they just want to control the whole island. They then would have a safe haven.
We still don't know what they want. We don't know why they're acting the way they're acting. They say they're working for the good of Sark, but they have not once consulted with the Sark people. They've consulted with their workforce, who are of course dependent on them for their salaries and wages.
We are going from one form of government to a transitional period, and then ultimately one day on to the full democracy. This has occurred around the world through generations over the years, and blood has been spilled, and a lot of men have laid down their lives to give us the democracy that so many of us have enjoyed throughout the world. This is the beauty of this island. You get this combination, these beautiful leafy lanes, and then you turn a corner, you've got the most dramatic scenery. You know, you look out to sea, it never fails to surprise me.
Where are you staying?
At the Aval du Creux.
Oh, I don't get brainwashed. Do you know what I mean?
We know what you mean. It was the only hotel we could be in.
Right, point G going up now. Do you take sugar, milk?
Yes.
Does that thing work?
School when I first came. It used to be in the old hall in the library.
Well, I would think that you're well experienced.
Well, and I used to do.
Adult children.
I used to do. People look after each other. You can leave your house open and all that sort of thing. It's very nice.
Yeah.
Oh, there we are. Have another biscuit.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for bringing those. Monster. Don't be brainwashed. No. Because they told such a lot of lies. Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, we're always pleased when we go away to get back here, because you know everybody and it's, oh yes.
The media's a bit of a worry.
Yeah. They try to undermine the seigneur completely. They try to undermine the seneschal, who's sort of, you know, in charge of chief police all the time. But they write put out such awful things about people.
Yeah, very unpleasant. Very nasty dishes
very
come out.
nasty
Very
things
nasty
about people they don't know. And, you know, lists about who not to vote for. Well, you shouldn't do that.
They bought Breccu, the small island, and built this, well, we think monstrosity of a castle on it. And then they lived in Monaco, I think. I'm not sure, I think they might be out of there now. And for some reason or other, they've suddenly decided they want to have some. And they have so much money. I mean, they've got more money than the whole of Sark's got. And they could buy it, which is what they're more or less doing. And then changing it. You don't make that much sort of money easily.
Yeah, you do, well, you can do.
Yeah.
The house,
This part was built on top of the bunker after the war. This was built, the bunker down below was built by the Germans in 1940-41.
well, no, I think they used this, and that's where they used to look out.
Ceiling and walls in here.
Through there.
They're both a bit deaf, you may notice.
Well, Mrs. Oliver, I mean, if you publish something and you can't say who you are, it's a pity. But we've since learned that Mrs. Oliver is Donnelly.
I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, she's obviously gives all of her details on the back of the publication. And I've written to her.
Slivenich.
And I think it's irritated a lot of people, and it's, you know, but I think overall, you know, it's the
sliding doors, as we call him. Gordon doors. Call him sliding doors.
Sark News itself is really a product, a function of the frustration that they have felt.
And one other, can't remember who the other one is. Delaney.
It is published with the approval of Sir Frederick and Sir David Berkeley.
We think, you know, if you can't publish something and say who you are, it's a bit of a pity, isn't it?
Like if you were ashamed of what you're doing.
Yeah, well, there should be. Okay.
In the feudal system, it was possible to sort of quieten them down a bit by, you know, the seneschal would have sort of a little bit of influence there, saying, you know, well, now this isn't the way we do things here. So I think that's the danger, really, that, you know, under the feudal system, because the seigneur has a lot of retained power, you know, whether he likes it or not, it's there. You know, we all tended to go along with not rocking the boat. And you know, maybe the boat needed to be rocked a little bit. And so, you know, I think this is going to be interesting to see how we can, you know, make everything more democratic. You know, I think any coverage, any press coverage is always helpful.
And even if you don't like it, well, you don't have to read it.
Some people would like to know the editor of the paper personally, not
All right.
shake
Their hands.
her hands and saying, hey,
congratulations and this sort of thing.
Congratulations, or complaining maybe.
Oh, complaining. Naturally. Well, if they were complaining, they could write or start their own newspaper.
Could you get that door for me, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, all.
It's a very important day, and it's crucial that the vote is right. I think there's still a lot of intimidation, unfortunately, and it's a worry for the future.
Yes, it's a history-making day, really. This is the first time that we actually get to vote our entire government.
We don't want in Sark, we simply don't want helicopters. And unfortunately, I was...
Excited?
Oh, not so much for me, because I've only been here a short while, 2 years.
Going past the workshop, and I thought that.
There's two camps, of course, the Barclays and the Islanders, and it's got to be sorted out for the sake of the island. Let's hope this will do it.
Hey, you got any ID?
Yeah, quite excited about it all, really. Kind of, but then it'd be glad to, when it's all over, everything's get back to normality again.
Do you have to submit your filming?
We do.
To the Barclays, to the what do they call it? Their advocates. I think they're too afraid. You don't think the BBC gets censored, but it does. Well, not. The lawyers. Their lawyers go through it and then they take it out, whatever.
Good morning. Some people haven't had a chance to take a look at the flyer.
There was the perception that the island was run for the landowners and not for the people. So I think it's, that is a good move. But you can have several forms of feudalism, can't you? You can have commercial feudalism. And we are being bullied by them. There's no two ways about that. They're very powerful,
They use the law, and they use the law to silence newspapers, and they've done so in the past. And it's very difficult to get our side of the story across.
To say that the freedom of the press is important, that the press should be open and all the rest of it, is fine, but it has to be honest, it has to be fair. And the other thing I said is that the editor of this paper should be known to us.
Well, of course, they own the Telegraph, but it's not that so much. It's newspapers are very frightened of publishing anything without their lawyers going through it, going through the story.
They own newspapers all around the world. They own newspapers in France. They own newspapers in England, other than the Telegraph, but that's their main thing. It seems to me that they've lost that particular view, that there needed to be some equanimity in what they were saying.
We choose to live under some of our quaint customs. That is our choice. And we get upset when journalists arrive and journalists go away, having spoken to us, and then make disparaging remarks against us.
Well, you see, they consider that I have power over people in Sark. The same with the Seneschal. They've been consistently attacking the Seneschal. They seem to have been switching their attack recently to various other people. And people who they think disagree with them, they get attacked in the paper.
Sir David and Sir Frederick Berkeley, who are, as we all know, press barons in their own right, and they will use the media to put the points over that they wish to put over.
Well, where do we answer? They control the media. Full stop.
Hello, where are you from? Oh, you're one of the Spaniards. Of course you are, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Oh, do I have to fold it?
Yeah, fold it and then half again and then put it in the bottom.
Okay. Fold it in half and then half again.
Okay.
That can happen. That's why I always recommend Boston.
Yes.
Well, but I'll underline that by saying I still want Sark to be good everywhere.
I mean, they want to have a helicopter, helipad on Sark. They say it's for medical emergencies, but actually, if there's a medical emergency, the helicopter would land on this field. Obviously, the real reason is that either they want to come across to Sark, or they would use it for commercial reasons to bring their visitors in.
Yeah, we have airplanes come over all day and disturb us, but we can't have a helicopter come in to save a life. But this is ours. This is one of our businesses. Again, what we term a turnkey operation. So we've fitted the whole. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
You voted?
I certainly have. I've been
Good
up
man.
there canvassing all morning.
Oh, you're a good man.
Yeah.
Great job.
Yeah, so I've done my bit.
Yes, one of our local fishermen.
Hello.
And he's standing as candidate today.
Yeah.
And a good man, a really good man. If we have a chief pleased that is anti-Berkeley, without putting too fine a point on it, if we have a chief pleased that's going to go out of its way to block anything that we come forward with proposals, any proposals we come forward with, I have very little doubt that the investment from Sir Frederick and Sir David will cease.
A few of the younger people will vote for, should we call them Berkeley candidates then? It's the only way you can put it. Because they don't see the longer picture. They're just understandably thinking of their pocket at the moment.
It's quite possible that they will vote for the people that employ them. It would be a natural thing to do. In fact, in that way, it's almost more feudal in approach than there ever has been in Sark.
We will not be selling anything. We will not sell a single blade of grass. We don't need to sell. But what we would do is we would wait until such a time as the political climate was conducive. What I stand for, the jobs, that we can keep all these youngsters in work.
No, you can't say that. The feudal system isn't over. The government's changed, but it's changed twice before. The system is still Her Majesty, the Seigneur, the tenants, and the tenants' tenants, which is still feudal. Oh.
Yes. Yes. And I say they're very reclusive. They wouldn't publicly come and vote. I can't see it. They may do. They may surprise us all. You know? Oh, they're not on the electoral roll, I don't believe. Speaks a lot about the Berkeleys, though, doesn't it?
Sonia, how does it feel to have voted?
Sure.
Yes, they will be allowed to vote. They're not going to stand as... Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't realise that. I didn't know that they weren't on the electoral roll.
You would suggest them to vote?
I think it's always a good thing to vote.
Hi, how are you?
All right.
Nearly there.
Thought you were going to miss it.
Nearly finished. No, thank you. You carry on.
Well, it was offered. It was offered. Wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, and you.
I think there's a fear that the Barclays can somehow dominate the election, but they have no more votes than anybody else. They and the people on Brecku have one vote towards the various candidates. So it's no sort of block voting taking over.
Filling up in there. Doesn't want to go in. That's a bad omen, is it not? Wonderful. Thank you very much. Here's the next one.
Right-hand man was no doubt voting for those keen on change, but when he and his supporters were left out in the cold, the stage was set for retribution.
I thought it was amazing. It showed the
successful first general election is already a victory for Sark.
We just have no idea of what the result will be. We don't know what's going to happen at the election because many of the tenants particularly are very hurt by the way they've been treated. Their families have governed Sark very efficiently for 400 years. And of course they feel hurt when people have voted them out. They can see why. They can see that it isn't human rights compliant. But it will take time for that wound to heal.
The weapons of democracy have been used against what is a very small community. All of those international conventions, which were designed to stop Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, Stalin, Pol Pot, Galtieri and the Falklands, it was designed to prevent acts like that.
There's been a lot of stress And one old lady said to me the other day that she really preferred being here in the occupation with the Germans here, rather than this present situation where you don't know who's your friend and who's not.
Why have we got all these naval officers? Something must have happened. Here's Dame Sybil coming with the naval officers. This was when the Germans were leaving.
Yes, and that's outside, that's at the Carrefour. At the Colnet, I mean.
The Colnet, yeah.
That's
that would
the
be...
remains at the Bel Air Hotel.
Yes. Was that the first tractor to come to Sark?
No, it wasn't the first one.
It was very nearly, though, wasn't it? The old Massey Ferguson.
One of the early ones.
Now, this is the court.
Yes,
That's Dame Sybil and Mr. Hathaway. There's Lobster's father,
yeah.
Jack Baker, I mean.
Yes.
Jim Remfrey, Eddie Ford, Walter
Tom
James.
James, yes.
That's just a few rocks. We've got plenty of those.
Mm. I don't know what rocks it is anyway.
No, nor me. What we don't know, we'll make up.
Quite a high score.
Yes.
And well, there's two places to there's because of the proximity of the last two votes, those between people.
Electorate in Sark decided that they didn't like the Berkeley propositions, which was very disappointing. Kem Delaney, who is the agent of the Berkeleys here in Sark, was not voted into Chief Pleas, and that is the man who brought with him investment of up to £5 million a year. Now, it's an extraordinary thing that, all bitterness aside, that they could not bring themselves to vote for that.
Wendy happy?
Oh, yes.
Good.
Hello. Hello, Michael. Are you in? I am.
There was obviously a darn good party going on outside the main hall last night. I only regret that we didn't finish early enough that I could have had a glass or two myself. The real loser is Sark, which is a great shame. I mean, I think it's obvious that Sark needs Breccu rather more than Breccu needs Sark. I just feel sorry for particularly the working population here, who depend upon the kind of investment the Berkeleys were willing to make for their jobs and their livelihoods. We've always believed we've been democratic, because when Sark was set up in 1565, the 40 families who settled it all had a representative in the government. No matter what persuasion you are, 40 people out of a population of somewhere between 550 and 600 is a huge proportion of the parliament. I don't think that the Berkeley family will actually sell up what they have in Sark, but I can see no reason at all why they should continue investing £5 million a year of new money. It doesn't appear to be wanted, it's certainly not appreciated, and why should any investor spend money on a community that, quite frankly, is so unwelcoming and unappreciative.
We all had jobs, we all had very good incomes, and now the people who sort of voted against the Berkeley brothers have put us in the same position as England, a big procession, because none of us have got jobs to go to now. and there's not that many jobs on the island as it is, and they were employing all of us because there was no work anywhere else, but now we've got nothing.
My family have been here since 1565, and I'm passionate about this island. The Senya's family has been here somewhat less. But he's equally passionate about Sark, and many people who come to live on Sark come to live here because they've visited us, they've liked what they've seen, and we're very happy for them to come and live amongst us. Unfortunately, you always get people who say, what a lovely place to live, and then come and live and want to change it. And we've welcomed people to come and live amongst us, but to live amongst us. We will not be bullied. The true Sarkee is a very independent person. We get no assistance. We live and work by our own hand on this island, and long may it continue.